Hey everyone, I'm Stephanie, and I believe that the right book at the right time can change lives, and that all readers should read children's literature, especially adults. So that's what we do here on the KidLit Love podcast. We celebrate all things children's literature: picture books, early readers, middle grade, and young adult novels for readers of all ages. In each episode, we'll talk with children's literature authors and discuss their books, their hopes, their dreams for readers, their writing process, and much, much more. Whether you're an adult reading to their inner child or connecting the young readers in your life with fantastic books, you've come to the right place. So grab a notebook to build your TBR, and let's get to today's episode of KidLit Love. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the KidLit Love podcast. I'm Stephanie Affinito, your KidLit loving host, inviting you back to another bookish conversation with a children's literature author. Today, I'm talking with Ainissa Ramirez. Ainissa dreamed of becoming a scientist since she was a little girl. She got the idea after seeing an African-American girl solve problems on a television show called 3-2-1 Contact. One of my favorites, by the way. In that moment, Ainissa saw her reflection. She later earned her doctorate in materials science from Stanford and worked at Bell Labs, where she met Jim West. She's here today to celebrate her picture book, all about Jim's electrifying adventures in creating the microphone, called Spark. It's the first book in the Black Innovators Series, and I can't wait to talk with her all about it, so we're going to get right to the episode. Ainissa, welcome to KidLit Love. I'm so glad you're here.
I'm so delighted to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
I toyed with the idea of saying 3-2-1 contact.
Contact.
It just brings up such childhood memories.
Oh, love that show. Loved it.
I was excited. I was excited to see that. So we're here talking about Spark, but before we do, I would love to get a bit more about that wonderful backstory I alluded to in the introduction and just see the journey you've taken to children's literature in this release.
Well, thanks for asking. I am, I wanted to be a scientist since I was very, very young. I was one of those kids who used to ask a lot of questions. I had a lot of questions, and my poor parents and grandparents used to hear me ask all kinds of questions. My favorite classes were my science classes, where we did experiments with leaves and we dissected frogs. I wasn't really happy about that, but it was exciting to me. So science was my favorite class. And then eventually I got the idea that I wanted to be a scientist. I loved programs back in the 70s and 80s like The $6 Million Man and The Bionic Woman. And I loved Spock from Star Trek. So that was like my ilk. But what really did it for me was a program on 321 Contact called 321 Contact, where I saw an African-American girl asking questions like myself. I didn't really see much of my reflection. And so that's what really put me on the path to becoming a scientist. And I studied science. I studied a type of science called material science. It's a little bit of chemistry. It's a little bit of physics kind of mixed together. And again, I didn't see much of my reflection. So I saw my reflection that put me on the path to becoming a scientist. But on the way to becoming a scientist, didn't see much of my reflection. And I think that that's the reason why I write children's books today, because I'm trying to inspire the next generation, just like 321 Contact did for me.
Yeah. Yeah. That is the gift of books, right? To pay it, to look back, to pay it forward, and to just inspire whatever might come next, and all those possibilities that are inside kids. I feel like picture books are just this unique opportunity to do that, especially picture book biographies. They are my favorite genre. And so I was really excited to dive into this one today. So tell us a bit about Spark. Tell us a bit about Jim West, the connection that you have to him, the inspiration behind the book. Kind of give us the backstory in this particular title.
Sure. So I studied material science, and I was way out in California studying material science. I'm originally from New Jersey, and I had made promises that I would never go back to New Jersey. I escaped, not going back. But there was a job opportunity at Bell Laboratories in Murray Hill, New Jersey, and you don't say no to Bell Laboratories. Bell Labs is where the transistor was created, where the laser was perfected. All those things that scientists are excited about all happened there. So I ate crow and I went back to New Jersey, on a very, very cold day in December and was just miserable. But while I was at Bell Labs, I got to meet Jim West. Jim West is a legend at Bell Laboratories. He created the microphone. And at that point, he had won almost every award that you can win, minus the Nobel Prize, which is very, very hard to get. And I reached out to him and asked if he wanted to just meet for coffee. I thought, would he be willing to meet an underling like myself? And he's like, yes, let's do lunch. And I was like, oop, that's longer than I had anticipated. So the whole time I was making sure I didn't drop food into my lap and didn't say anything
Yeah.
stupid. I don't remember what we talked about, but I do remember being in the presence of like a great man.
Hmm.
And fast forward many years later, I saw this movie, Hidden Figures. And that really touched me because it's a movie about the impact that African American women had on the space program in calculating the trajectories. And I was really touched by that movie. But afterwards, it dawned on me that there are other hidden figures that are out there. And I actually met one, and that's Jim West. So I went back and emailed him and said, Jim, would you be willing to undertake this journey with me? I don't know anything about children's literature because I've written books, but they were for older readers. But I'm going to learn all I can to get your book out. And he's like, yep, let's do it. So that's what put me on this path to creating Spark.
So I I want to take a detour into something you just said because you're used to writing for one audience and now you're shifting gears to a completely different
Different audience.
audience. How is that learning curve?
It's fairly steep. Children's literature, I think, is actually more challenging. It's a shorter book. Each word
Mhm.
really, really has to matter. And
Yeah.
also, I'm writing about science, so I have to make sure that I write science as well as I can or as understandably as I can for
Yeah.
very, very young minds. So I found it to be a tremendous, more challenging actually than my books for older readers. They're all challenging, but this is a different type of challenge.
Yeah. Yeah. And that is one thing that I wanted to bring up about the book, which was the very understandable science, even for non-science minds, right? That is there to understand that trajectory that he took from, his childhood all the way through to building the ideas and then, failing forward and then getting to what we have today. That is definitely a superpower of yours, I would say, is in the book, is truly just getting it naturally because of the way you're describing the text. So steep learning curve, but
Steep
paid
learning
off
curve.
for us for
Oh
sure.
well, I'm so glad, and I have many more gray hairs because of that journey. But it was challenging because as a scientist and as a person who's a science writer, you can hide your lack of knowledge behind a big jargony word.
Yeah.
But if you really value children's learning, you work tremendously hard to distill the science so that they can understand it.
Yeah.
And I thought I knew what Jim West's invention was all about. I could talk about it at cocktail parties. But when I had the challenge of making sure that a 5-year-old could understand it, I said, I don't think I really understand what's going on here. And also wanted to make sure I touched on concepts that a kid would know so that it's meaningful to them. So it was a journey. It took many years to get this book into the shape that it exists
Hmm.
today.
What was it like learning about Jim himself? Were there many more lunches and coffee dates? And how did that research differ from the research you're used to in science?
Right. Well, Jim and I live in different states. He is a professor at Johns Hopkins, and so it was mostly phone calls using his technology because the microphone is in the cell phone.
I know, I
Uh,
love that. That's great.
yeah, I was like,
Everywhere.
how do you feel about this conversation being made possible by you? How do you
You.
feel about that? And Jim is today we're taping on February 10th, 2026, and today is Jim West's birthday. He's 95 years old,
Yeah.
and he is a little sharp. He's a tough nut to crack. So it took many conversations to get to what he was as a child. And I tried to
Yeah.
emphasize to him, I need to know who you were as a kid so that kids can relate to you.
Yeah.
And for him, it was a long time ago, but also he was a very mischievous kid and he didn't want to go back thinking about the punishments that he got. So he's like, look, I don't want to think about that. I blocked that out. But I'm like, I need that, Jim. That's the part I need so
Yeah,
that
that's the
kids,
connection. That's
that's the
where kids are
connection.
going to go,
Yeah.
oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah. So some rambunctious little girl, little boy is going to be like, "Oh, what I'm doing, mate, my parents don't get it, but this is what Jim West did." They're going to see their reflection. So it
Yes.
took several phone calls to get to that point.
Yeah, yeah, I'm sure. And in the book, you have, the story of Jim West starting in childhood, as I mentioned, and going all the way through. But you do have some extras that I want listeners to know about at the end. You have the author's note, you have information about the life and work, you have a timeline. I'd love for you to talk about those elements that you included in the book as well that complement this really engaging story.
Well, I really love back matter.
Me too.
You can write it differently, of course. And I enjoyed writing the timeline because what I was really trying to get across to young minds and to parents and to caregivers is that Jim is of the lineage of names that we've heard before. So when you think about the microphone, one of the earliest microphones is Alexander Graham Bell, the creator of the telephone. Another creator of the telephone that you might know is Thomas Edison.
Mhm.
And then there are other names that we do not know. But then the last one is Jim West. So he is in that lineage. So that's the reason why that timeline was there. Is like, look, we're not just joking around. This is our Edison here. So that
Yeah.
was the reason why that timeline was done. And I also wanted to write his backstory because it's so rich. His mom was actually a hidden figure. I really couldn't put that into the book, the front part of the book, because that would be too tangential and it's so interesting you would it would get you off track. So this is a way to honor his mom and all the other people who were in his life as well.
Yeah. Now let's talk about the illustrations. They are gorgeous. They
Yes.
are gorgeous. And there's something about them that just feels so real and lifelike,
Mm.
like you're there, like you're thinking, like you feel the electricity, on the page. I'd love for you to talk about those illustrations from your point of view as bringing your words to life.
Well, I am very fortunate to work with Setor, and I actually had a chance to meet him on a Zoom call a couple of weeks ago. And as you might know, in the publishing realm, the illustrator and the author don't really talk to each other directly.
Yeah.
And you may never meet. But we were on the Zoom call, and I just said, before we get started, Setor, I just need to let you know that you did an amazing job.
Yeah.
And it was a love fest because he's like, your words, you gave me the right notes to make it possible. So I think that the right pieces came together. And when I was writing the book, they were asking, what do you envision for the illustrations? And I remember when I was a kid, there was a show called Batman that wasn't very, it doesn't have all the rich visuals that we have today, but it used to say pow and zap. And I said, I think we need that element because we're talking about electricity. There's a time when Jim gets zapped. There's
Yes.
noises like beep. Like we need to have that kind of element in there. So Setor has more of a graphic novel style,
Yeah.
and I think it was perfect for this book.
Yeah. Not to mention in those end pages that I love so much too, like you kind of see the electricity, around the edges. It's every detail
Every detail.
is so carefully done.
And I would also add that Setor actually has a engineering background. So there are little Easter eggs throughout the book, little symbols like you'll see something that kind of looks like a zigzag. That's the symbol for a resistor. He has little symbols for light bulbs. So it's going to be satisfying on many levels. The colors for the kids and the graphics for the kids. But the parents are, particularly if they're technically oriented, will see things that other people don't see as well. So
Yeah.
it's got many layers.
I have to go back and reread now.
Okay.
I'm gonna go on a hunt for some of those
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's
Around the
one of my
edges, you'll
favorite.
see little symbols.
Okay.
Part of the border are these electrical engineering schematic symbols.
I love it. I love it. So, as you think about your book going out into the world, especially because in the day of recording, it is his
Mm.
birthday, which is a great celebration. What
Mhm.
is your hope for the book or for the readers who get this book into their hands?
Well, I have many hopes for the book. I hope that people grab the book and they see their reflection. I hope people grab the book and they see the world a little differently because they'll see that the impact, something that they use every day, was created by an African American man. I hope that kids who are curious will see this as a superpower. Jim was perceived as mischievous, but ultimately he was very curious about the world, and it's this curiosity that led to this invention. So I hope that kids see that asking a lot of questions might be annoying to adults, but it's actually their superpower, and they should keep
Yeah.
that superpower all throughout their lives.
Yeah.
Um, I have a lot of hopes. There's many different hopes that I have for the book, but I think that, and I also think that adults who may not know much about how a microphone works, I think they're going to learn how a microphone works
Yes.
and learn about the science behind it, because
Yes.
this science is very complicated. It's not taught very well, but now you can experience it in a more distilled, understandable way.
Yeah, I will raise my hand at being that adult who felt like she closed the book and went, "Wow, I did not know Jim West,"
Yeah.
which I'm very glad I do now. Like that is a whole nother layer we need to know.
Hmm.
But I was surprised at how easy it was for me to understand because of that steep learning curve for you. And I just felt like I was sitting up a little taller after
Nice. That's
after I
exactly
read
right.
your book.
That's what I want. I want you to be like, yeah, I can't wait for someone to ask me about a microphone
Yeah,
because I'm about to hit them with some knowledge, you
that's
know?
right.
Um, yeah, I think it's important. We should know how the devices around us work.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, thankfully, this is not the only book in
No.
in this. This is part of a series. I'd love for you to talk a bit about that and give us whatever sneak peek you can as to what might be coming next.
Well, I've had the good fortune of having a publisher that is open to a 3-book series. And so this first one is Spark. It's about Jim West, the pioneer behind the microphone. The next book coming out is about Gladys West. She recently passed in January of 2026. She is the black woman mathematician who helped to enable GPS, and so that book will be coming out in the fall of 2026. And then after this book, there'll be another book about a early 20th century inventor. His name is Garrett Morgan. Garrett Morgan, many school children might know about him because he's the name behind one of the early stoplights. But he also created a gas mask, and there's a great story about how the gas mask saved people and how he was able to develop it. So that's what's on the horizon for this Black Innovator. It's called the Black Innovators Series, and it's from Candlewick. And I do have some other books that are more science explainers that are on the horizon. One that I'm very excited about, and I'm just looking at notes on right now, is a chemistry book. It's called How Atoms Make Friends, and it shares
Title.
the different types of bonds. Scientists will give you words that are very boring, like covalent bond, ionic bond, metallic bonding, but they're actually a sharing bond, a give and take bond, a joining bond, and and because of those different bonds, the materials that they make are different. So a sharing bond makes the strongest material we know, a diamond. So sharing is actually a strong bond. So
Wow.
I'm working on that now. And then there's another book with Charles Bridge. It's called There's the Rub, and it's about the hidden world of friction. And friction is one of those unsung heroes or unsung elements of our lives. We know, I start off the book is friction is one of those things you don't even notice until you have too little of it or too much. And that kind of brackets where friction is. But there's some amazing things that happens with friction. So here I am in New England. We have a ton of snow outside. Every time I step on the snow and I hear a crunch, that's friction. And in the
Mm.
springtime, when I hear swings going back and forth and I hear that squeak, that's friction. Or when I hear crickets making their chirp, they're doing that by rubbing their wings together or their legs together. That's friction. So the book kind of
Wow.
evolves the course of a little girl's day from beginning to end, and the friction that she experiences.
Wow. Okay, so it may have been a steep learning curve, but you have such goodness coming to us. Like that steep learning curve is going to pay off for all of these books. Is it hard I'm just thinking of how your scientist brain must work as you go through the day. You probably pick out things differently than me, who is listening for words and
Mm-hmm.
for stories. Um, I imagine you just have a long laundry list of books that you could bring to life for kids, helping to make this science practical and fun and relatable.
I am doing my best. I do have a ton of ideas, but it is, as you talk about it is about getting the words right. It is about making a construct or a narrative that's meaningful to kids. So I
Mhm.
can just say, hey, do you want to know about this? But we know that that's not enough.
Yeah.
So it is a challenge that I may have an idea, but now I have to figure out how to position it so that
Yeah.
it's meaningful.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a ton of science. There's a ton of science, and I'm enjoying trying to figure out how to make it meaningful to kids and finding the ways to bring these works to life.
Well, I'm enjoying it on my end. Reading your books, they're wonderful.
Thank you.
Where's the best place for listeners to find you so they can keep track of the books that come out in the series as well as anything else that comes their way for you?
Oh, well, great. I am on Blue Sky. Everything is at Ainissa Ramirez. I'm on Instagram as well. LinkedIn, it's just Anissa, but LinkedIn is where I seem to connect with a lot of people. I know that we've had the passing of some platforms, but LinkedIn has certainly popped up as something interesting for me. Yeah, so if you can, type in Ainissa Ramirez, you'll also see my website where I kind of list things that are going on in my writing world too.
Okay. Well, I will gather those links for listeners. I will put them into the show notes along
Thank you.
with links to the book, Spark, of course. And thank you for coming on and helping us be part of, putting Spark into the world. Looking forward to the other books that are to come. I really enjoyed our conversation and learning more from you.
Thank you. I'm so delighted to be here, and thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah. And listeners, thank you for listening to another episode of KidLit Love, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for listening to today's episode of the KidLit Love podcast. You'll find links to all of the books, resources, and ideas mentioned in the show notes and at alitlife.com. You'll also find KidLit Love on Substack. That's where you'll find posts for each episode, monthly KidLit roundups, and an invitation to join my summer book club and go deeper into the world of children's literature. And if you loved this podcast and want more, you might like to listen to my other podcast called Get Literate. It's a podcast that explores all things books and reading, notebooks and writing to build a life you love. One more thing. If you love what you listened to today, please take a moment to rate and review the podcast or take a screenshot of the episode and text it to a friend. This helps the podcast grow and builds our bookish community of Kid Lit Love. Thanks for listening.